as I could. I'm not an attorney, but I did read through the First Class Township Code, the zoning code, and several of the ordinances. And first, I'd like to ask, if there's a conflict, does the First Class Township Code supersede a West Lebanon Township ordinance?
State statute supersedes.
And is the First Class Township Code state statute?
Yes.
Thank you. Because this meeting is actually a hearing that can be appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, I request that my testimony, which is in writing, become a part of the official township minutes. To start with, number 1, notice to property owners. A recent notice mailed to residents gave them 125 rather than 180 days to install curbing as prescribed by Ordinance 21-503. That is Exhibit 1. No handbills. Per another ordinance, there was no placement of notices along impacted streets, Section 2011. The July 6, 2010 minutes did not contain a right to know request, and in anticipation of today's minutes, that has been corrected, and I thank you for that. Number 4, right to know law and official map and ordinance establishing roads. Information requested under the right to know law at the July 6 public meeting was not timely provided. An August 17, 2010 solicitor's letter, Exhibit 3, suggests in number 3 that the township does not need to display an official public map showing streets in relation to existing properties, and refers me to an official map in the Recorder of Deeds office. The official map, Exhibit 4, and then I also reference 4B, is from 1889. Then there's the zoning code that requires an official map to be on display at the township building, not in the Recorder of Deeds office. The official map should also be sealed and signed by all of the Township Commissioners, which the wonderfully historic map. If you will allow me a few sentences on the history of our home, according to now deceased lifetime resident Pauline Shiner Lighter, the farmhouse was built around 1877, 12 years prior to any streets being laid out for West Lebanon by her grandparents, Mary Strohman and Harry Kleiser, who was also a limousine driver for the Colemans and the Brachs. During the December 31, 2007 interview, Pauline said that Grandma owned the land up to the west end where the brick house is. I lived in your house with Mammy Kleiser until 1939. In short, the 1889 map carved up Henry Kleiser's farm to officially make streets, but no width descriptions were recorded with the map. However, a survey of the outside perimeter of West Lebanon was recorded with minutes and degrees. Number 5, display of proposed ordinance. At the time of publication on August 27th, Exhibit number 5, neither the Township nor the Lebanon Daily News, Article 26, Section 1601, had a copy of the ordinance for public view. Also, the ordinance number is listed as both 471 and 472 in the advertisement. A copy of Ordinance 472, Exhibit 6, was provided but not prior to advertising. It was late. I did get it via email. Exhibit number 7 has a date and time stamp. To the best of my knowledge, the newspaper never got a copy of proposed Ordinance 472. Therefore, since requirements, and I'm quoting, since requirements of this act applicable to the enactment, approval, advertising, and recording of such ordinances or portions thereof were not complied with within the time limit prescribed as this Act 1502-1, I believe the advertising for Ordinance 472 is null and void. Eminent domain. The solicitor says that there is no record of any eminent domain proceedings being utilized to acquire a municipal roadway within its corporate limits, Exhibit number 3. And that's number 6. But 27301 states that, quote, where uncertainty exists as to the boundaries as shown on the official zoning map, boundaries indicated as approximately, and I use the word approximately, following the center lines of streets shall be construed to follow such center lines, end of quote. Let's face it, approximately gives land to one property owner and takes land from another property owner. Record or no record, any taking of property is eminent domain in my book. Ask Billy Joe Wise how it feels. Number 7, enforcement of existing curbing ordinance. I believe that in multiple instances, people were wrongly forced to install curbing on land that they do not own. It is my understanding that other people along 16th Street have been told the ordinance doesn't or won't apply to them. Where is the consistency in that? It is my understanding that a resolution cannot amend an ordinance. Only an ordinance can amend an ordinance. Where is the ordinance outlining who is exempt from installing curbing and sidewalk? I contend that with either the existing or revised Ordinance 472, everyone, no exceptions, the township, the businesses, the Sunshine Law, did all deliberation that could lead to a vote where a majority of Township Commissioners were present take place at an advertised public meeting. Here's some of my areas of concern with the existing curbing ordinance. Right-of-way. If owned by a resident, land should first appear on his or her deed before being declared a right-of-way. This is not the case for multiple township properties. Right-to-know request, and this is a new one. Please provide the township signed right-of-way agreements with residents. I've not been told that there are any. If owned by the township would have to maintain any land between residents' property lines and the township road. This is not the case. In multiple instances, residents have been voluntarily mowing grass, trimming, filling holes, planting flowers, mulching, etc. on public land beyond their property lines. Shall they cease and desist and allow the township to maintain this strip of land? A 10-foot right-of-way is unrealistic in West Lebanon Township. On many properties, the right-of-way goes onto porches, even building footprints. To install both curbing and sidewalk, some porches and some houses would need to be removed. Again, this is an eminent domain taking by the township. If you want a right-of-way, a 5-foot right-of-way would be more realistic in an 1800s community. Official street descriptions are obsolete. For example, Guilford Street is defined as an improvement from 22nd Street from Lehman Street to the Reading Railroad tracks. That's Exhibit 9. I said, what? I didn't quite follow that. It was really confusing. By law, citizens must record deed descriptions that close. It is doubtful that township streets have been surveyed with minutes and degrees, then recorded. This has caused inaccurate placement of curbing. In at least one instance, 2301 Guilford Street, the curb line was moved 3 times. An official township map containing a seal date and signatures of township commissioners is not available at the township building for public inspection as required by section 1502-1 of the zoning code, and no current legal official township map has been produced. However, a zoning map created by Ordinance 281 was provided, but does not specify the width of streets. My understanding of a zoning ordinance is to create commercial and residential and industrial districts, that sort of thing. Spot enforcement and inconsistency. Verbally, it has been said that some property owners have been exempted from installing curbing. Again, I reference 16th Street. This is another right-to-know request. Please provide the list of exempt properties, including township property, and the ordinance allowing for these exemptions. Financial hardship. Many township residents struggle to pay water bills and were forced to install curbing. To vote for the proposed ordinance will pave the way for sidewalk to become legally mandated and a financial burden. Again, this is not just about curbing. If this ordinance goes through, it also means that everyone here, whether today or when you sell your home, will have to install curbing, no exceptions. Abutting, a term used consistently throughout West Lebanon Township ordinances and the first-class township code. According to Webster's dictionary, and I quote, the new terminology is running to, adjoining, or along. The proposed ordinance admits the existing ordinances is unenforceable. By using the terminology, certain modifications need to be applied to afford the township proper enforcement mechanisms. That's like saying, you know, we didn't have it right the first time. So that language is brand new and was never discussed at a public meeting. Installing something like curbing and sidewalks or removal of material from streets, alleys, or public grounds is prohibited. No person shall take any earth, stone, or other material from any of the streets, alleys, or public grounds in the township. So technically, installing curbing or removing dirt and stone is against township ordinances. They're conflicting. Both actions could theoretically end in fines, even jail for residents. Number 6, it is my understanding that no municipality shall have the power to require as a condition for approval of a land development or subdivision application the construction, dedication, or pavement of any off-site improvements. In multiple cases, curbing and sidewalk would be off-site improvements based on the recorded deeds of residents. So areas of concern with proposed curbing and sidewalk ordinance. Sidewalks. The proposed ordinance is not limited to curbing. It also covers sidewalks, which can eat up potential profit on the resale of a home that someone worked all of their lives to pay off. That's in Ordinance 21-502 section. Abutting. The proposed ordinance attempts to legalize an injustice imposed upon multiple property owners whose land does not touch the road, but have installed curbing in a hypothetical right-of-way, and if someone would fall, creates liability for both property owners and the township. Financial hardship. Many township residents struggle to pay water bills and were forced to install curbing. If they sell their home, they would be forced to install sidewalk too. It's not fair to work all of your life to pay off your home and then lose it because you can't afford the water bills and or taxes or curbing. Making people install sidewalks adds insult to injury, especially if a porch or portion of their building would have to be removed, which is a taking by eminent domain. I conclude that whether you pass the proposed ordinance or not, the township could end up in lawsuits, which cost taxpayers money to defend. This matter doesn't have to go that route. We can settle this tonight. I believe that what the people want. It takes the form of curbing and sidewalks in this instance. It takes a big person to correct a mistake. The current series of mistakes that seem to build up one on top of another. Perhaps some mistakes were made before you took office. I see 5 big people sitting around these desks tonight. And please, it's time to stop the domino effect. This ordinance was not properly advertised, is inconsistent and unenforceable, and would take land from residents. It's a bad ordinance. Let the proposed ordinance die, or vote no on Ordinance 471 and or 472. Then repeal Ordinance 472 of 2010, Ordinance 426 of 2005, and any other ordinances pertaining to curbing and sidewalks. Other possible resolutions? As our forefathers did in 1888, appoint a committee of 3 trusted impartial statesmen to review and make a recommendation as to what is an acceptable solution, and points to be considered would be create and display an official township map. Curbing in excess of 150 feet may be an undue burden placed upon a property owner. Some ordinances make townships install and pay for excessive curbing. A 5-foot right-of-way along roads may be more realistic and still meet the 33-foot minimum road requirements without unduly burdening property owners, and in some cases taking a portion of their structure by eminent domain. In exchange for signed rights-of-way, support homeowners who want to do a quick claim deed to acquire any unclaimed property between their surveyed property line and the existing street that runs in front of their homes. Rescind the current curb and sidewalk ordinance. To know that the majority of township residents agree with any recommendations, if need be, put a resolution on the ballot to poll whether or not people want to abolish the curbing and sidewalk ordinance. I really appreciate your time tonight and for allowing me to get through it, and I will turn this in for the official minutes. I did sign this particular copy and provide the attachments.
That the commissioners never saw. It doesn't make any sense to me. It would seem like you're usurping their authority. And I think is that these commissioners should be making the decisions, and you should be making the recommendations to them. Before we print anything in the paper, we print up ordinances. They should have made that decision to do that in a public meeting. I don't think that that's quite right. And that's just all I have to say.
Anybody else? There's a lady over here.
Hello.